Good evening, everybody. This is Pete Morris, and here is the ComancheZOOM for July 8th. This is the show we're doing tonight, the AC for Comanches Part 2. It's a continuation of the discussion we had a couple of weeks ago. There's a lot of really good stuff coming up, so hang on to your hats, and we'll go back to our usual who you are, where you are, and what you fly. In my case, I'm Pete Morris. I'm out here in Danielson, Connecticut, back home finally. The airport has been repaved and now is reopened so we can land our planes here at least. And my Comanche is finally home. I fly a Comanche 250, 1963. I'm IFR and all that kind of stuff, so I'm having fun with it. And everybody else, now key your mic, unmute and say who you are, where you are, and what you're flying.
Ernie James, Yucca Valley, Southern California, 65 PA 24260, and it's currently 112 degrees.
Wow, we got 70 degrees and thunderstorms.
I'm Ray Fay. I'm Madison, Wisconsin. I fly a 260B model, 1966. And it is about 65 degrees in Madison today.
Is it raining out there, Ray?
No, it isn't. It's a little bit overcast, but it's cool, and it rained pretty good yesterday.
We're looking for the tornado to come up on western or southern New England tomorrow morning. So it's been raining all afternoon, and it seems like each afternoon for the last 2 or 3 days. But tomorrow morning it's going to be raining until until that storm will go off to the east. So I'm in Western Massachusetts. I fly with John Futter in his Comanche 260B. No, it's a 260C. Got my multi-engine rating back in 68, I think, in Tim's Air Park in Austin, Texas. And been flying with John Futter for about 25 years.
Oh, that's nice.
Anybody else? Go ahead and key your mic and say who you are, what you are, and where you fly. Yeah, who you are, where you are, and what you fly. We all know what you are. This is not like ATC. Go ahead and talk.
Well, I'm John Westerfield from Birmingham, Alabama, flying out of Galveston, Texas this week. I got a C model Comanche.
Did you fly over to Galveston?
No, I fly the oil rigs here for a company, and Houma, Louisiana is I got a T hangar there. That's my usual base. So I flew to Houma and then had to drive to Galveston.
Oh boy.
So the long way around, but at least I got to fly part of the leg.
I spent some time in Austin with the Air Force. We came out to Galveston going fishing in a DC-3.
Yes.
We got out to Padre Island and they said there wasn't any fishing, so we took some sort of a boat back to Galveston Bay and slept on a park bench out there watching the critters in the sand. Us up in the morning. That was a way you used to have some parties on Galveston Bay.
Yeah, it's an awkward crowd here at Galveston for sure. Yes, there's everything from people wandering by to a medical school on the island and everything. It's quite a collection. If you want to come people watch, this is the place for it.
Yeah, it was like what do they have in Florida? Spring break. The kids go nuts on Galveston Beach.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else? Key your mic and come on in. I want to mention too that next week's ComancheZOOM is the down dirty and everything about how to get into AirVenture and out of it and where to go for parking. We're going to have our exclusive interview to tell us all about it. And it also, because it's related to safe flying, the FAA has decided we can offer wings credit for next week. It's going to be pretty cool. Go ahead, let key your mic and say who you are, where you are, and what you're flying.
I'm Dave Shaver. I'm in Falston, Maryland, fly out of Martin State down in Baltimore and have a 65 PA 24 260.
John Futter, I see your mouth going, but you're not on the mic yet.
Unmute there.
Hey, thank you, George. I need some computer work and assistance. Yes, hi, John Futter, and hi, Pete. And I am in Greenfield, Mass. And Kelly is listening in the background here. That's why I was talking. And I have a 1969 260C based in Orange, Mass. And good to be with all again.
Welcome, John.
When you've got your schedule to put your autopilot in, I know you were mentioning it.
Okay. I am scheduled to go to Green Mountain Aviation December and January, and they are indeed going to put in an autopilot and perhaps a couple of other things as well.
Where's Green Mountain?
Middlebury,
Oh,
Vermont.
good. Whoa, perfect. I love it.
So we'll see, and we followed the presentation with Sunny last week closely, and we'll see how it all works out.
Martin, wasn't it you that said if you've got an autopilot, use it?
Yes, it was.
I thought so, and I agree wholeheartedly. You know, they used to say, if you've got an autopilot in there, we're going to teach you how to fly by the numbers, and don't use any electronics. We gotta do it the old steam gauges, and I think that has been updated. If you've got an autopilot, you better know how to use it, because sometimes the weather gets bad, you're too busy. So you've got to be effective on that autopilot.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's people think flying with the autopilot is easy, but
No,
to fly an approach with the autopilot can be more difficult than flying it by hand, because the autopilot will never capture the ILS if you shoot through it, right?
right.
But you can, right? So you have to think ahead when you're planning it. And I think, I mean, when I grew up, nobody ever taught me to use the autopilot. It was, well, real pilots don't use it, but you can use it in cruise if you really want to. And I just think that's the wrong approach. I mean, I'm not talking about on a nice day when you're just out, you know, looking at the beach and stuff like that. But if you're doing serious IFR work, a single pilot, I think it's wrong not to use the autopilot. I just really do.
Oh, I agree. Oh, there's a time when you shouldn't use it, and that's just have to take off and just before landing, maybe 500 feet.
Right.
But the rest of it, make sure the autopilot's on. Now that can be taken to extreme too. They were down in the Myrtle Beach area in a Bonanza when the door popped open and they were IFR. Well, this guy didn't fly much without the autopilot on. He wouldn't fly his airplane without the autopilot on, but they got into trouble when they were IFR and the door popped open on that Bonanza. And so he took the autopilot off and tried to control the airplane, got into a diving spiral. The only thing that saved him was that diving spiral broke out of the clouds at 1,000 feet above the ground. And only then he went visual and corrected his diving spiral. So, you know, there's a time and a place. But you know, you can get too used to using the autopilot. You still have to fly some hands-on IFR, but use it as much as you can.
And that's another thing, actually, a door coming open is
Oh,
one of the things I brief my passenger, because I've had that happen to me a couple
oh,
of
sure.
times. And I brief anybody, if the door comes open, leave it alone. Don't touch it. Don't try to open it and slam it shut, because you're never going to do that.
That's
But
right.
just leave it alone. And all you'll do by opening the door is induce yaw.
That's right.
But it's important to tell passengers that before you get going down the runway, in my opinion.
That's it. A Bonanza is hard to close the door. Comanche's hard to close the door. If it comes open, forget about it. Endure the noise and get the airplane on the ground the safest way possible.
Great. And I'm Martin. I'm from Grand Prairie, and I'm still waiting for my 260B to have its autopilot installed, completed. And there's some other things that have been waited for. They changed the size senders, and in doing that, they realized the tanks needed to be reseated or something, and they've having to wait for parts. It's driving me insane. It's been in the shop now for almost 6 months, and I'm beginning to think I don't actually have an airplane.
Oh my goodness. Grand Prairie, what state is that?
Texas.
There you
Can't you tell from the accent?
No, you sound like you're from Australia.
Oh, dear me, you said the wrong thing. It's the wrong side of the world. No, I'm English.
Well, I spent a number of years in Texas, but never picked up the accent.
No, I like to say, when people over here ask me where I'm from, I usually say I'm from Far East Texas.
Oh yeah, there you are. Hey, CJ. I thought you were on the road, stuck in the weather down in Florida.
Yeah, she's in.
George Merriam. Hi,
Hey,
Pete.
Hi.
Good evening, everybody.
Howdy.
Hey, Ray. Good to see you again. Dave Shaver. Hello. Nice to see you. Ernie
Hello.
James. Good to have you
Hello.
tonight. Mr. Futter. John Gritsky. Hello. Martin Horton. Hello. Nice to see you all. Sorry to be late. So how is the storm treating everybody on the right
get-
coast?
you get stuck in the weather down south?
I got so stuck. I have never seen weather like that. I was fortunate to have a couple of really experienced pilots, because in 10 minutes it can go from, it looks like you can go to lightning strikes all around.
Mhm.
They said it's not common, but that it does. And I was really grateful to have wiser minds than mine, or at least more experienced ones.
Wow.
Well, sorry to break in. Hey, I'm gonna grab 5 minutes right before 7:30, or maybe right at 7:30, to talk a little bit, because we have 60, what is it, Pete, 60 that want to come to Oshkosh and hopefully come and have fruity drinks at ComancheTown.
Yeah, there's over 60 that are registered, and the high number, I believe, is 54 on Wednesday.
Oh boy. Oh dear. So
And
yeah, so
there are 22 that are going to be there early, that are looking to get in together.
fantastic. That means we're going to be able to establish a ComancheTown that will be at least able to handle 25 to 28 at a time if we all do make it in. So that's good news. I think this may be the biggest gathering of Comanches since our 50th anniversary, if we make it. And that is a good thing. That says our type is getting stronger and more flying, more representation. That's great.
You know what I think is kind of cool?
Go
I think
for it,
it's
Chris.
cool that a younger generation is getting involved in aviation and they're buying these Comanches. But
You know, you are right on.
the younger generation is flying, because your little grass strip near here called Moontown is dead. You know, it used to be pretty active, and I'm thinking, wow, what's going to happen with aviation? But, you know, guys are seeing the light and getting into it. That's cool. Maybe we got a future.
Absolutely. Yep. And then we have a recently retired Marine Colonel, Jim Walcott, and we talked about the fact that the country, our politicians, are usually pretty interested in small business because so much of our job creation all over the world, but especially here in the US, is related to small and rural business. So the last Small Business Administration report that I read said a little over half of our job creation came from small and rural. And if you look at, and then I think it was a third of our cash exports by volume, at least, was small rural, which is impressive if you think about the complexities of going international. And yet nobody's really looking at well, they finally are starting to pay attention to one of the big things, challenges for small rural, which is internet access these days. But the other one's transportation. You know, small rural by definition isn't next to Chicago International or Dallas or Los Angeles. You're someplace out in the middle of nowhere. So these little airplanes, which are a unique resource, are underappreciated for their importance to American business. And Jim is willing to start to help bring that message forward. It's going to take a while. I had to do with passing legislation a couple of times, and it's never fast, but it's going to be important. So I expect that more and more in the next 5 years, that'll come to be a point of to make, just, yes, they're not expensive, and yes, they're little, but most of our transportation needs are go to visit our new customers or our suppliers and get into something like a Comanche, and you can go nonstop from New Hampshire to Miami if you've got a 4-tank airplane. Nobody knows it. They're like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, really, we can. I mean, we might need to stop for our purposes, but the airplane doesn't have to.
I just hope between the leaded gas and just the whole fear factor, they let us keep flying, because we saw back on 9/11 that they can turn it off in a stroke of the pen.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and we and the whole world, stayed home for the last year, and that's got its own ramifications. But we will see. The other thing that happened when we all stayed home is that the value of aircraft came up and more people flew than ever before. People dust off rusty pilot's licenses. And the thing that continues to fascinate me is even with more general aviation flights by airplanes and pilots that had not flown much, and we all know that recency is one of the big safety factors, the accident rate was actually down last year. I've stunned you all into silence.
It's been pretty quiet. I keep inviting people to key in and talk about who they are, where they are, and what they're doing, but nobody spikes up.
I'll pipe up. It's John Gritschke in Lake in the Hills, Illinois. I fly a 65 400 model. As long as we were talking about autopilots, I have bought my 3100 autopilot. It's supposed to go in after Oshkosh because I wasn't going to risk being stuck in the shop for Oshkosh. So,
wise man, congratulations. And
I had a little talk with my avionics guy, and I said, "Is it reasonable to assume?" He said, "Let's not chance it."
Wise man. Welcome, John. Good to see you. And this is CJ. Normally, I would be flying a 1962 180 and the 68 260B into Oshkosh, but I got news today or last night actually, that it'll just be the 260B with my father, which is a great honor. And I'm in Vermont, and the 260B is in Westerly, Rhode Island. And everybody else jump into any quiet moment, say who you are, where you are, and what you fly.
Mike Ellis, Moline, Illinois. I got a 1960 250 that is currently in the shop in Rockford, getting the 3100 put in.
This is a theme. Mike.
Yeah,
what are
well,
the
it's been there
exciting
for a month now. So, yeah.
Oh man, Mike,
I
it's
just
good to
I
see
just
you.
watched your YouTube video today when you were dropping it off over there.
Yes, off to see the wizard. Well, the wizard is a miserly person with his time.
Oh no. Any estimates, Mike, on when you might get it back?
Probably another week and a half is what they found. One of the turnbuckles on the ailerons had some rust on it. So we're pulling the cable and the turnbuckle out and redoing it. That's adding. I'm putting new yokes in. I'm putting ram's horn yokes in. That was supposed to be much easier than it turned out to be. So I'm hoping another week and a half. We'll see.
We will all have our fingers and toes crossed for you, right, everybody? Yep.
Yeah.
God bless all the avionics installers and Godspeed.
Yeah, I'm worried about the flight back because I'm losing all my round dials. I'm no longer in miles per hour. It's all knots now. So yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Okay, you're not going to like me for saying this, but are we allowed to go? I thought we had to have our miles per hour for airspeed
Nope.
because we were,
No.
okay.
Besides that, it makes it seem faster.
Yeah, that's true. But this approved flight manual has both miles per hour and knots, so we can go knots.
I thought, okay, cool. I for some reason I thought Zach Grant had said we always have to have both. But cool.
The 3100 only does knots, so we're doing knots.
Okay, I'm not gonna counter. I'm happy you got it. Jeff Munford also has he finally was like, I don't know about the waiting for the trio. So he just put the twice as much money down to get the 3100 upgrade done on his 260B. So it sounds like everybody's 3100 today. We should send a message over to Doug Telef, who flew the 400 and fell in love with it, that he should come on and just listen to us say 3100. Well, Mike, welcome and good to see you. Anybody else? Who are you, where you are, and what you fly?
CJ, this is Jimmy. 260, 65, 260, and it is in the shop trying to get through with 3100 that I won't be at Oshkosh with.
So your 3100 is keeping you from flying it to Oshkosh. Although I heard you were going to be in Oshkosh in a Bonanza, is that right? And then coming over to ComancheTown?
Yeah. Well, I've
Okay.
got a friend I'm catching a ride with.
Excellent. Excellent. If you bring your tent, for anybody that wants to come to ComancheTown or Oshkosh in general, doesn't have to do ComancheTown. What we've heard is that the official policy is that you have 2 camping spots for close friends and family, but they basically said each of you has 2 spots for tents, and if you only have 1 tent, you have another spot. So got a place to camp, and definitely a place to come and get fruity drinks and hang out and maybe learn a thing or 2.
Well, I'm waiting to get there.
You got to get there first. That's right.
Got to
Well,
get
good.
there
We'll
first.
look forward to seeing you. Exactly. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you. We actually have heard from quite a few people who will be parking, especially twin aircraft in airports around the area, and then they'll just be present as people in ComancheTown. So the camaraderie should be excellent. Anybody else? Who you are, where you are, and what you fly?
Hiya, Mike Meadows. That 1967 twin Comanche behind me, and as you can guess by the accent, I'm from Houston, Texas.
Mike, that twin is gorgeous. We love your accent, whether it's from Texas or not. And welcome to the evening. Thanks for being part of us. And what's your autopilot?
Right now, it's an Altimatic 3B, which, as you all know, looks like a Russian submarine with knobs and dials and buttons all over the place. But it still works. Waiting for the G500.
Which we understand from Garmin is in process, and the twins will require the GI 275. T5s won't be an option.
John Van Bladen, the guy that done Ron's panels, it's
Sure.
his twin Comanche is the one that Garmin has got doing the testing in Salem, Oregon. So
Outstanding. Great.
so that's good news.
That is really good news. That's a prime Twinkie.
Yeah.
Good. So, well, welcome and thanks.
Hey, this is Milton Ames, Tucson, Arizona, Comanche 250, 1959. I plan to arrive at Oshkosh on Friday. sometime in June. Hopefully I can park with everybody.
Oh, we're counting on it. Milton, are you already registered for ComancheTown? Pete would probably
Yep.
know off the top of his head.
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Here is what we were going to ask. If you are able to come in just a little bit earlier, and if you can't, you can, and I think we'll be able to get you in, but we're trying to get everybody to hit the arrival point, if possible, at 10 in the morning. So, or be on the ground.
Yeah, I saw that. I read that. I'm probably not going to be able to do that. So
Okay. We are going to carve you out we're going to do our very best to lay our bodies on the ground on your spot so that you're part of the core group.
okay.
I'll personally lay my body on the ground in your spot.
Okay.
Looking forward to seeing you and welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
That's all we need is an arrival speed bump.
For everybody else?
No,
Oh, that's
you
for
don't.
me. Yep. Oh yeah, I suppose. I know for all of you who've driven over chalks, I wouldn't be that much worse. Okay, fess up. How many of you have ever left your chocks on your nose wheel and then just taxied over it anyways?
I have. And left them there.
Yeah, when I did it, I had three, Angel Flight passengers in the back.
Oh, no.
Oh, well.
Oh,
Love it.
I haven't done that, but I don't have experience taxiing in grass.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring that up it's time to talk about taxiing in grass. I gotta go find my old lady glasses, everybody, so 1 second. I did just pass my class 2 medical, yay, but I've definitely old lady glasses required. So it is 7:27 and I threatened you all with talking about taxiing on grass. So basically, if you are a twin, so when you get to Oshkosh, you'll taxi down the runway and then the parking, vintage parking experts will wave you off, and they're usually riding either a motorcycle or like a little scooter, like a motor scooter. And they're running around with their vests and their little flags, and and you're coming in with your VAC sign and your ComancheTown sign and your lower left part of your windscreen. And we're going to be giving them a list of the names expected to come in on Friday. So, or rather the tail numbers, and they're going to be watching out for us, but they are also potentially going to be overwhelmed, which is why this is like everybody's doing their best. And we're just gonna find out what we get. And we will definitely have fruity drinks, we'll definitely have generators, and we'll definitely have a lot of camaraderie. And other than that, we have a lot of Comanches coming. So when you are taxiing on grass, you probably all remember that you want to have your yoke back in your lap, right? Because that's going to lighten your nose wheel and keep your prop as high above the grass as possible. Puts your weight on your mains where you're more able to spread your weight out. When you come to a dip in the grass, which when you come off the taxiway, there's a swale to carry the water away so that the airplanes and the taxiway stay relatively dry. So you're going to go, there's a slight down and then a slight up, and millions of airplanes have handled that just fine, but the technique to do it is different if you're a twin versus if you're a single. In the Comanches, the way Swearington designed us, our engines are pretty much right in line with our nose wheel. And so if you think about what happens when you go down into that little dip and then you come up the other side, you wanna, if you're a twin, go straight across the swale. So you're gonna go straight down and straight up. And that's because your nose wheel is gonna come up and lift your propellers up. And then you're just gonna continue straight on. And that is your good way to handle unevennesses in terrain. If you are a single, you wanna go diagonally across the swale, and that's because the singles, where's our prop compared to our nose wheel? It's out ahead, right? So we want to go across the ditches at an angle, or the swales at an angle, because that effectively flattens out the cross section so that it's just a barely down and then a barely up, because we're hitting the depression at an angle. And that's our best way to go across. And of course, they are trained to not send us across big ups and downs. But any questions, and does that make sense?
Yeah, I kind
mean,
of had, I had that in mind, but I wasn't sure about required power settings. I'm a single.
Yep. So the other thing on grass is it totally depends on the grass. If you have tall grass or soft ground, you'll need to keep your power up a lot more. And the big thing is to not stop. And every so often you'll get a green volunteer, and they're going along and trying to make sure the airplane's still with them. And you'll be sitting there like, go, 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 because when you're on grass, you do want to keep going if you can, because, you know, it just takes so much more power to start moving when you're on grass. And other than that, if it's dry, in general, it's really not bad. And if it's wet, in general, it's, you know, you need more power.
Air pressure at the high limits. It matters on moving your plane across grass.
Oh, good point. Yep, good point. Let's see, hang on a second. I am just got a text message. Did not get your talk about Comanche gear on grass. Did everybody hear me, or were some of you not able to?
I heard you.
Okay.
Yeah, it came through on the recording.
I
Great.
think you started it just before 7:30, so if somebody just joined, they may have missed it. And if you covered flaps, I missed it.
Got it. Robert, as a very experienced grass pilot, why don't you talk to us about flaps? And then I'll go back and just one more time for the people that joined at 7, quickly just summarize the twin versus single on uneven ground. Over to you, Robert.
Well, with the flaps, I always have one notch of flaps and definitely have the yoke back. Be prepared if you have to do power, make the motion smoothly and not abrupt. One of the reasons being, if there's little stones in the grass, an abrupt change will more than likely pull them up in the prop, as opposed to if you gradually increase the power, that's less likely to happen. But one notch of flaps seems to work well, and I would only retract them after you shut the engine down. It's all yours, CJ.
That's good. I didn't know that. I actually need to go and re-review our soft field manual for procedures. So, but yeah, Robert happens to have operated a lot in and out of grass strips, and that is great input. So, and what I said in a nutshell is, because the twin engines propellers are in line with our nose wheels in the twin Comanche, twins go straight across singles go across at an angle. And that's because the cross section of what you're going to travel, if you cross the depression at an angle, you're essentially going in a much flatter traverse than if you went straight across like the twins. And I'm just going to check the chat window here for a moment. Okay, yep, just the question about what about flaps. Any personal experiences or questions or stories to relate about grass? Oh, I will say one thing. I have not seen rocks at Oshkosh ever.
Well, that also goes when you are on a either a dirt
dirt field or you're on a rather unimproved tarmac field where there's the possibility of little stones, the idea is particularly on your takeoff run, if you have the luxury of enough space, you start to roll, and then as you roll, you further increase power. The idea is not to do it suddenly. That creates little vortices that will pull the stones up into the prop. If you're moving forward as you're increasing power, that's less likely to happen.
Yep.
Because back in Arizona, I actually had to take off from an all gravel runway. The entire runway was gravel. So once you start moving, you can increase power, but just do it gradually. Thank you.
Do your mag check while you're rolling.
You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
That's good advice, regardless of the circumstances of gravel or tarmac. Smooth throttle application is always a good idea.
George Grattan, we missed the beginning of what you said, but we caught the tail end of smooth power application is always a good idea. Do you want to re-repeat the beginning?
Certainly, particularly with carbureted engines, fuel injected as well. There's a lot less stress on the engine if you roll the throttle in at taking off with full throttle. That's proper procedure, regardless whether there's stones on the runway or not. I have been hit by a stone from off a main wheel into the tail of my Comanche, and by the way, when there's a big enough hole in it, it blows up like a balloon.
Oh my Lord. So your stone created a hole in your tail?
Pretty good sized one.
Wow.
All coming out of an airstrip in Montana.
I think this is why the regs allow us to make patches in our skins.
Can't patch the tails.
I replaced it with new, it worked out just fine. But if anybody wants a set of free guards for the tail feathers, my name is George Grattan. Contact me and I'll send them to you for nothing. I'm not flying out of Montana anymore.
If you send a note in to Pete Morse or fill out the buy, sell, swap form, we'll put that offer into the trading post. You can stick the note into the chat window and we'll try to grab it as well. So thank you for that offer, because there are some people heading to Alaska, I believe, in their Comanches, and they might appreciate it. There's definitely gravel strips there.
Trip to Alaska is exactly why I put them on.
We're off topic a little bit, but I have we have a little bit of space here while some of our air conditioning guys join in. What are they? Oops. What are the guards? I had never heard of them. Oh, George, I think you might need to unmute.
Whoops. I got them while in Montana, and I don't have any paperwork to support them, but they were made for the Comanche, and they are for the tail feathers to protect from rock damage.
Is it a leading edge tape of some sort?
No, it's a full fiberglass leading edge.
Like a cuff?
Exactly. And it's a manufactured piece. It's not a bogus part. I just don't know where it came from. It came from its prior owner, who was Montana-owned airplane.
Make it land better?
Not that I could tell, but I can't land one anyhow.
I resemble that remark.
Why do you think I asked?
The universal solution to landing better other than airspeed control seems to be the trailing edge. Okay, somebody who's got a less senior brain than mine.
That thing work. Trailing
Yes,
edge fairing, will it work?
the
I put the
trailing edge
fairings
fairing.
on, I put on the guard at the back of the flap, and none of them made an appreciable difference to me. Control your speed, you gotta go to landing, period.
Yep. And
I
the
got to looking at
other,
this thing. You know, the wing on this airplane, the incidence is it hits the fuselage. It's like a B-52. The wing is like already stalled, just sitting there with the fuselage level. I'm trying to rationalize why I can't land this darn thing. And that's my first excuse.
I'm with
all
you.
right, I'll give you all my best tip other than airspeed control on final was somebody said when the numbers get big in the windscreen, pick your eyes up and look at the end of the runway. And that and trim, like, you know, and I don't have electric trim, so I'm sitting there like this all the time. That and just trimming it, since I'm not strong and I sit close to the, you know, pretty close to up front. So I don't, you know, for me, having the airplane be pretty light to the touch helps me a lot. But those were the two things. Just as the numbers get big, or if I'm on, you know, if I'm on an ILS, when I see the 500 foot big things there, I just look up down the runway, and for some reason it just makes it better.
Just another tip I heard from another pilot was look at the numbers when you take off. The minute you lift off is about the same numbers you're going to see the minute you set down.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you mean in terms of your airspeed?
Airspeed, attitude, taking off and landing are just reverses of each other. If you can take off with a Comanche smoothly, you can land one.
You shouldn't be seeing the numbers when you're rotating, you're making your transition because you're just past the numbers. Watch the runway widen out considerably because you just went past the numbers.
That's a good one.
George, we all know that there's a magnetic pull to those numbers. They draw you.
You're right, Mike.
That little
But I
180.
think what,
We used to
Go
just
ahead.
dump the flaps in that little 180. That's what the beauty of that lever.
yeah,
You
the
get
Johnson bar
close.
flaps are awesome.
Yeah, I missed my Johnson bar.
Yeah, when you start to float, dump the flaps. Good plan.
But I think what George Grattan was saying was watch the numbers in terms of your airspeed, right? Is that right, George? Because your numbers for, you know, to settling are roughly going to be about the same as what you're taking off with.
They should look the same.
But the closer you get, you're going to have to adjust your attention down to the 1,000-foot mark if you've got that much runway. And then when you're looking at that and your airspeed over the fence, over those numbers is 1.3 VSO. So now you're on configuration. And assuming if you have a little turbulent air, you'll be using partial, like 20 degrees of flaps. In John's airplane, of course, it's either approach flaps or full flaps. And then adjust your attention down to the other end of the runway.
Yep.
And do that as the runway widens because you can't see the numbers anymore.
Hey, CJ, this is something you already probably know well, but you know, as I'm doing that, I'm cranking that thing and flaring, cranking, flaring, looking at that flap lever, cranking and flaring. I get to looking where the indicator is, and it is way, way, way further back than it is on takeoff. So if something happens and you got a gas on it and go around, remember, you're going to have to uncrank.
Don't be looking at that crank. Look at the runway. You start looking at feeling and you're looking in the wrong direction.
I think his point is just a lot more aft trim.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't have if you're just a solo guy out there and you don't have at least probably 2, maybe 2.5 to 3 notches of up trim as you're landing, you're going to be fighting it. And you know, the other thing, and I'll just chime in here, is that you know, when you talking about, you know, CJ was talking about, you know, when you see the numbers go by, you know, then get your head up, you know. And we tell that same thing in the airline community or even in the Navy. When I was in the Navy, It's called spotting the deck. And if you're looking down at the 500-foot marker or whatever, then that's wherever you're looking is where you're going to go. And so, you know, we would tell constantly, you know, not the Navy guys, because they're focused on a different thing. They're focused on the Fresnel lens. But the airline guys, we tell them, hey, get your head up and look all the way down at the end of the runway. And, you know, of course, then you're listening to the cadence of the radar altimeter and other things. But same thing on this thing. I went night flying the other night just to kind of get recurrent myself and pulled off 3 nice squeakers. But again, you know, part of it again is all speed control. And I do have an angle of attack system in my airplane. And even then it's hard sometimes, unless it's just real smooth, glassy air, to really put that airplane on speed with a donut, you know. And for me, it's about 73 knots, full flaps, which, you know, around 85 miles an hour, kind of coming in that, and you're still fast. As far as on the takeoff goes, you know, I get my donut L over D max right at about 70 miles an hour. So yeah, that's kind of the same thing. You know, that's about when the airplane is gonna, ready to land. So if you're coming over the fence, you know, and you're still at 90, you got a long way to bleed some speed.
Yep.
You know, my technique is I fly it kind of like I do my tailwheel airplane. And as I approach the runway, the approach in, if I know I can make the airport, I'll just pull the power all the way back and let the airplane float and point to where I want to land or to a general spot to get down into ground effect, and then rotate and pull the nose up, put it on the end of the runway, and control my descent with power. And I've had 1 or 2 bad landings because I use flaps. But typically I don't use flaps. I usually land on the hard surface long runway.
Okay, and I'm hearing George Merriam, who's been an instructor for over 50 years, saying,
I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing. If you've got that airspeed, you're 1.3 over the end of the runway, over the fence, and sure, reduce the power, but you know, that power is going to help your left hand. Where's that smooth landing going to come from? It's out of your left hand. Where you land on the runway is your right hand, and that's the power. But a smooth landing needs to have, there's only 2 things you're looking at when you're making the landing. One is your airspeed, and the other one's where the heck is the runway. Now, CJ was saying, look at the numbers. Yes. Then look at the 1,000-foot mark, then the other end of the runway. That's where the runway is. Look at your airspeed, know what it is, and where's that runway? Don't look at your right hand cranking the trim. Don't look at the ceiling. You're diverting your attention.
By feel.
That's it.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just put that trim indicators by cross check. You know, as you're floating down the runway, coming in too fast. Now, I admit, I was in the right seat when I did this.
Yeah.
And because I was trying out the plane. It was a test flight. I hadn't flown probably 5 years. But, you know, if you don't, your left hand is working awful hard as the plane gets slower and slower. You're going to trim the stupid thing out. And I was looking up there thinking, how much trim did I put in this thing? And it's all the way, it's like 3 notches back. So
yeah,
you ought to keep that in mind. If a deer runs out and everything you got going on, oh gosh, I got a gas on it, you know, just keep in mind, because otherwise you're going to be pushing awful hard with your wore out left hand from trying to land.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a ComancheZOOM on go arounds, because Chris, what you're saying is right on, and particularly for those of us like me who are smaller and lighter and sitting really, really close forward, we tend to put a lot of upward trim in, because that way we're not working so hard with our left hand. And I know that I personally need to go out and practice go arounds for exactly that reason, especially if I'm flying the bigger engined airplane where I've got more weight up front and more engine when I do put the power in.
That's a stall you're going to practice too. It's called the trim stall. Because you're ready for landing. You've got the flaps in there. You got full trim back, and you need to go around. You gotta use that left hand, push that nose down. You're gonna get so go.
I would also add, don't be afraid to add back trim, 2 or 3 units, whatever it is. Because think about it on a takeoff. How many of you are taking off, you rotate, and you don't trim, you got your hand up there trimming the nose down.
That's it.
You're gonna do that anyways. You do it on every takeoff. Don't be afraid don't put in back trim just because you're afraid, oh my God, if I have to go around, I'm gonna have to move my right hand and put some trim in. You do that every time you take off.
I always fly a fully trimmed airplane. My right thumb from military flying, my right thumb is wore out from trimming.
Mr. Merriam, that term trim stall, you're only the second person I've ever heard my whole life use that term, and it is so true. The go around is everything forward, throttle, mixture, prop, and yoke.
Well, if you crash your airplane on a go around, that's what happened. It was a trim stall.
Absolutely correct.
And you're probably pushing on the rudder too. Now you're looking at a snap roll. So don't do that.
Or bad fuel management. And as a guy who just did my little go around, I loved it because it was my strip's a one way in, one way out strip. It's grass. It's 2,000 feet long, and I'm coming in, sitting in the right seat. I'm probably going out at 85. The biggest thing about a go around is you make the decision early. While you still got plenty of flying. If the airplane ain't ready to land the first part of my runway, I'm obviously screwed up and I'm gassing on it, and it's a takeoff now. You got to make an early decision, and there's no shame in it. Just go do it better next time. You screwed up that landing already. It's already screwed up.
A snap roll at low altitude on a go around gets you to, again, tie the world's record for low level aerobatics.
Yeah, I'm usually pretty quiet, but I want to add here that the only time I almost crashed was on a trim stall. And what I wanted to add was when you're pushing forward with your left hand on that yoke, and you reach up to do that trim to try to get that nose back down, and boy, it does pitch up, steep up. Pay attention to the throttle, because my throttle went back in when I let go of it to reach for that trim.
You're right.
And that's what almost killed me.
Yeah, well, your right hand should be on the throttle, all sticks forward, and left hand pushing.
But you got that trim to fight with too. If it's back like CJ's talking about.
Overpressure the trim. Don't worry about the trim until your power is full. And then gingerly, don't look at that handle up there. Reach for it and feel it and get that nose. What's the
well, the
trim?
irony is I have an electric trim, but didn't even think about that at the time. And as what was I going to say? Push forward on the trim. It escaped me.
That's one of the things. That's one of the things I said last week was about trim. Is an electric trim is a great advantage to have. People were saying, why do you need an electric trim? And that's one of the reasons, is because the last thing you want to be doing on a go around is taking your hand off the throttle to go to the trim wheel, in my opinion.
Yep, it's one of those great three-handed maneuvers.
Exactly.
My current Comanche, I have a problem with my throttle. That if I don't pay attention to it on takeoff, it self-reduces. It goes out about an inch.
Oh
And,
my goodness.
so I just customarily now, whenever I push that throttle forward, I lock it.
That's it. Yeah, that throttle lock, the friction lock.
The other thing I'll point again, as far as landings, again, just look at the mathematics of it. So I've got the Kellogg book here, and of course it says stall speed, full flaps and gear extended is 63 miles an hour. All right. So if you take 63 and you multiply that times 1.3, that equals 81.9. We'll call that 82 miles an hour. So when we're approaching, 85 full flaps, 95 full flap, okay, that's fine. But again, remembering, if you're holding that all the way until you're ready to touch down, you're 30%, 20 knots over the speed at which it's gonna stall in time to land. You have got to bleed off that speed. And if you don't do it as you're approaching the runway, you're going to do it floating down the runway. Mathematics, that's all it is.
Correct. How about your left hand on the yoke with the electric trim? Just put your left thumb on the trim as you're pulling the power back and keep your thumb on the trim until it touches down at 63. If you're
George,
go ahead, Hank.
if I may, I have had several unplanned go-arounds, mainly because where I fly and practice night flying, we have a whole lot of deer that seem to love to get their rear ends warm on a slightly chilly night from the heat coming off the runway. And in that case, what I do, and I have several times had to make them, because you've got to configure for a landing, full stop, full flaps, gears out. Trim is in a very awkward place. And so I don't go to full power. I go to enough power to get me going up. As long as I'm over the runway, I know there's nothing sticking up very far. Then when I get the trim cranked in and it's, and the pressure relief, I will go to full power for the climb. But a Comanche, particularly when it's light, going from full power at a low speed is really a handful.
Agreed. And I practice go-arounds now and I stay over the runway. That's another point that's worth making, because I followed my training and went off to the right when I almost lost it. And then I had obstacles to worry about as well.
Oh man, Ernie, we are glad you're still with us, and we appreciate your sharing this real life stuff, because this is what really happens. You're right. So
Yeah, practice those go-arounds. I do 1 or 2 every week now. And I got caught by a surprise tailwind. Otherwise, I thought I was configured nicely.
oh man, yep. Yeah, the surprise tailwinds, they catch the trail daggers, they ground loop, and we end up going way further down the runway than we expect to, and that's when we need to go around. You're right. So
That early decision is the key.
yeah, Pete Morse worked with the FAA instructors to put on a really good fly-in with an instruction on max performance takeoffs and landings. Actually, George Merriam had that unexpected issue that you're hopefully just about done with, George. But one of the things that they recommended, and there were 22 pilots there, we had a good group of people learning, but they said, when you fly in, always be planning to go around. And then if you actually get to land, be pleasantly surprised.
It's always correct. When do you know you're going to land? Well, when the wheels touch the ground? Oh yeah, maybe. You may have to go around after.
When the ropes are on the tie down.
That's it. You stop flying the airplane. It's shut off and tied down.
Yeah. I will say one thing briefly. I was on the flight out, and we've got a couple of questions in the chat window. Before we go to air conditioning, I want to just thank Gary Gray, John Long, the others who are in here waiting very patiently to talk air conditioning. I know we have a lot of people who are really interested in air conditioning because it is that time of year. But I was on the flight out to the left coast. This is just a comment about when are you sure you're landing? There were 40 knot headwinds or 40 knot winds across the Rockies. There were headwinds that was a 180. So for the 180, that really made a big difference in our fuel planning. And there was everything else happening. I mean, it was just one of those days where it was, icing and low level wind shear and a SIGMET for turbulence and embedded thunderstorms and, and IFR everything. So it was kind of not looking so good. And put down at Daggett, which is, some of you know, a field in the edge of California, that and the wind was going back and forth across the runway. So, you're busy with your feet and everything. And I actually was afraid that the airplane was going to take off again with some of the wind gusts. If I had been in a smaller, lighter airplane, you would have. So I'd never really thought about it in a Comanche because we're kind of heavier than that, I thought, but it was an interesting lesson.
You got to go around that situation too. You got to gas on it and maintain control best you can, but you're flying again.
Yeah, wherever you are. I didn't want to be flying from the taxiway too much or the ramp, but I almost was.
I mean, on a landing, you know.
Oh yeah, totally. But in this case, I was getting to be afraid that I was going to be flying from the ramp. So let's see, 1.3 VSO. Bill, were you asking about why we were saying 1.3 VSO?
No, I was suggesting that we use that as an indicator. A lot of people creep up between their VFRs from 1.3 to 1.4 to 1.5, and then they get slapped back down to 1.3. I don't know why we do that, but it seems like it's a real tendency. But I also think that when you look down and see the VSI at 1,000 feet per minute negative, you really got to watch out because the go around seems to be much more like it. Or no, or is that untrue?
Well, you're going to get a wind shear, and you're going to get an unexpected rate of descent. Runway that dips down and the wind's blowing pretty good. So you get 1,000-foot rate of descent. That's why your right hand's on the power, you know, so that you can catch that rate of descent. But the 1.3 VSO gives you enough energy. That's what you need, is energy and an energy meter to overcome that. But a little burst of power will help that diminish that 1,000-foot rate of descent.
No, that's really good to keep in mind. Thanks.
It's really good to bring up, Bill. Thank you for bringing it up. And Mike Ellis just mentioned to remember that stall speed changes based on your weight, a surprising amount. So yeah, that stall speed that gets published is at max gross, right?
Especially those with the 4-tank versions. It's from 90 to 60 pounds. On my plane, I was just looking it up, but there's a huge difference. If I'm coming in with almost full gas versus coming in light from a long trip, it's 15 miles an hour. It's huge. You get into ground effect, scrubbing that off it just takes forever.
Yeah, I think we should try to sponsor these max performance takeoffs and landings all around the country for exactly that reason. We have a lot of useful load and we have a huge amount, we carry a lot of fuel. So I think, as the Comanche neighborhoods start to develop more and more, PJ Medella had, helped with getting a lot of fly-ins and stuff happening on the West Coast, and Pat Lee in the middle of the country around Oshkosh, and stuff's happening all over the country now. But now we're starting to get to know each other again. It might be good to get some of these things covered. Just while the times are good and we're getting it together, it'll be a nice excuse and something that'll maybe save us. Wins happen.
Just a real quick review on that, the thing we did up there at Farland, the max performance takeoff and landing. What they did was take your pilot handbook, and you had to calculate how much runway you needed to take off on that given day for that density, altitude, and wind condition. And then when we departed to Farland, we were invited to look at the markers they put on the side of the runway to see how close we came to what we calculated. It was not a test. It was an inspirational eye opener is what it was all about. If you figured you could get off at 900 feet and it turns out you took 1,200 feet, that's a good piece of information to have. And that's the approach that they took.
Perfect.
Yeah. And Michael Ellis just posted the approach and landing speeds for the 250 from aircraft weights that range, welcome Ryan Jeffrey, aircraft weights that range from 1,700 to 2,900. And the range of speeds goes from 53 to 69.
Yeah,
that
didn't copy very well. I apologize. The first set of numbers is VS, then it's 1.3. So VSO is the first one, 1.3. The left side is no flaps. The right two numbers are flaps. So you go from 83 at 2,900 pounds to 64 at 17, which would be pretty light. I mean, let's be realistic, but it's still, 83 to 70, let's say, is realistic. You're scrubbing off a lot of speed. That's miles an hour, by the way.
Yeah, that's a huge range. That is a huge range. Yeah, so that's a, here we are struggling to come across the numbers at 80 or 85, but really maybe it's actually huge, maybe if you're really, really light, you're low fuel and not carrying much but yourself, maybe you're really looking at 75 across the numbers, across the fence.
Another quick
It's interesting
reminder
to practice.
that these Zooms get recorded every time, so you can look at them from the website. We also save the chat text, so you can read the chat text. So that all that information about landing speeds is going to be on the chat. You'll have it.
Right. And to answer Chris's question about were videos made at the recent takeoff and landing symposium, I live streamed to Facebook, and I will need to go back and check and see whether I then was able to ask the upload to happen from my account into Facebook. If so, those who are on the Piper Comanche Facebook group might be able to find what I was able to live stream. But that one, no, that was a live in person. And so it was kind of a best efforts. And then let's see, and then we're going to move to air conditioning in just a moment. But Robert Klein just sent out the wings email, and I want to just go over to him, and then Sam will talk briefly about the trio. I do have news. And so Robert, over to you, and then I'll take 60 seconds to talk about the status on the trio, which is good news. And then we'll get to air conditioning. Great conversation. Sorry about the change of topic, but wow, boy, was this valuable to I think to me and a lot of us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Klein. I'm the Zoom statistician, the guy that sees how many people get on and so on. But I'm also the guy that forwards to the FAA the names and email addresses of the people that have requested wings credit, particularly for last week's session. Well, out of the 51 people that requested wings credit, there were 19 people I could not identify from the Zoom logs and their names. I sent out an email, and not everyone has responded with the information I requested. And all it was roughly what time you got on, about how long you stayed, and what your name was. And I don't want to hold up forwarding this information to the FAA any longer than this weekend. So by all means, if you got an email from me, please respond to it so that I can let the FAA know the individuals that have requested wing support. Oh, and by the way, you have to stay on for 50 minutes for the presentation. You just can't show up for 5 or 10 minutes. The FAA requests 50 minutes. I will supply with them your name, and you want to use the email address that they know you as so that you get the proper credit. So if anyone has not responded to the wings email that I sent out, please do so I can forward it to the FAA. Thank you.
Thank you for your efforts on that.
Very well.
It's out of a biennial, isn't that what wings credit's good for? Is biennial flight review?
It's the wings program. If you do 3 seminars, that's the education side of your biennial, the ground school part, and then you do 3 tasks in the air with a CFI. Usually takes about 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes total time to get all the stuff done that they suggest. And you're done. That's it. That's your biennial. CJ, you're up. I could also comment on Robert's work. He does an awful lot with the statistics to get your name and your time connected together. but there's a bunch of other stuff going on in the background too. All those forms that you use to register, they come to me. And I have to put them together so that Robert can use them and put them into a spreadsheet so that the FAA can use it. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the background.
All righty. So a quick thing on the trio, and then I've got some pilots actually calling me saying, can you send us the Zoom information for tonight? So there'll be a few more people zooming in a couple of moments. Update on the Trio Pro Pilot. And then we'll go over to air conditioning. The Trio Pro Pilot is complete. What I heard from the guys there is they are optimistic to get the approval by Oshkosh. Now that's in a week, or really 2 weeks and a half. So, but this is the first time I have actually heard this particular person there say that they were expecting to get their approval in a very short time. For those who are like, you know what, I'm really sick of being without an autopilot and participated in the group buy special, the conditions of that allow you to ask for your deposit back, and they will give you your deposit back if you're like, you know what, this is late and I want to go Garmin or STEC. So your choices are either way, but I do happen to have a suspicion that this one is finally very, very close. So any last questions on that before I ask Gary Gray to get ready to talk to us, if he's willing to jump in first? And I'm going to apologize. We did not have a test flight as we usually do. And so I'm going to be putting people on the spot for a few moments. Any questions about the Trio Pro Pilot? Okay. And Gary, are you ready to be Tiger It? You'll need to unmute.
I would suggest everybody else, you go to your speaker view. That way you'll see everybody up close and personal when they're talking.
Oh, so I want to do a quick introduction here to the types of units that we'll be discussing tonight. And they are oh, go ahead.
All right, let's see. I've got unmute. Now I've got a PowerPoint done. How do I share the screen? So
Yep.
I can share the screen, share the whole thing, share. And
oh, well done.
Start up. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
The home, and so slideshow from the beginning. Does that look okay?
Looks great to me.
All right, very good. Hi.
Everybody else, any comments?
No, looks good.
Okay, so real quick on your last topic, probably the strangest landing I ever had was going into Myrtle Beach in a big rainstorm. No GPS because it was out for service, so I'm flying in ILS. Lots of rain. I was a little high, then a little low, and still ended up landing. Noticed the Delta regional jet watching me come in. Got it on the ground, but there was a lot more water on the runway than I expected. Set it down pretty nice, but then all of a sudden I noticed I am drifting to the right, and I am not sure what's going on. So obviously I'm either flying, boating, or driving it. And brakes weren't going to work, and go around was looking not so great. And I simply remembered a trick from when you drive a snowmobile. You basically kick the rudder and give it just a little more goose, and that pulled me back over to the center line, and then I got caught enough and I could stop. And I'm sure I entertained the Delta guys that night, but anyhow. So we're going to talk about coolers. Now, this is my airplane here. That's a picture at Leadville, which is 9,934 feet, 27 feet. I have one setup that most people don't, and that I have removable seats. So I don't have a bench seat in the back, and I don't have the problem.
Yeah, look at this. This is beautiful, isn't it?
I don't have the problem of how to get the unit in or how to get the tubing in. But one of the things I had to think about, what would you consider if you've got an air conditioner in the back? You've got to get the air forward, so it's either going to have to come through the hat rack or underneath the seat, and you're just going to have to work that part out. The unit that I've got is an IcyBreeze. I bought it at Sun and Fun a couple of years ago. The only real problem I've had with it is that the remote start began to act up, and I went through a few bumps and grinds getting the repair situation set up, and it's now back where it's functioning. Problem was, you get the unit in the back, it's all ready to go. You push the button to turn it on, and if it doesn't come on, well, that's great. If it doesn't go off, well, that's another complication, because once you're at altitude, people don't want the cold air. But it's a nice unit. Everything is designed to go with it. What they're showing there in the picture, I do not know what that white piece is. I suspect it's an ice pack. They're showing 2 pieces of pipe and a splitter and a connection in case you want to add a longer hose. So it's a 3-speed fan. Everything's pretty much there. It's got a nice handle, so you can drag it along the beach, drag it along the parking lot, whatever. They started off in Tulsa, and I believe they're in Sweetwater, Texas. It's a rugged unit, no problem about that. It'll hold 30 pounds of ice, which is more than you will ever need. It's a standard cooler size. Now, it's 16 pounds empty. Rechargeable battery, you can run it straight out 12 volts. One of the things I'm considering doing with my interior upgrade in September is having a switched outlet in the back, so that I don't necessarily have to depend on the remote control switch, which we'll show you in just a second. You know, it'll last on low speed at 4 hours, and certainly, you know, most of the time you don't need the air conditioner on for more than, you know, 15 minutes while you're getting ready to go, and 15 minutes, you know, when you're getting ready to land. So it's plenty of time. In fact, one of the things you do with any of these air conditioner units is you just turn them on while you're pre-flighting, and instead of leaving the doors and the pilot window, et cetera, open, you leave everything closed and get the cabin cool. Lots of different options and pieces and things like that, but you know, basically, depending on what you need as a total, you're looking at about $400. The remote cord is 8 foot. I am not sure what that 12-volt charger is for. I don't have that. You can get a power supply that's meant to be plugged in the wall and left there. You can also get a power adapter to charge the battery. Now, I'm switching over to this ion lithium ion battery. So I'm not sure about everything that's going to come with the unit that I'm getting upgraded. There's your tubing. The airflow splitter is kind of nice because, okay, you can point it up and down or left and right, whatever you want to do. Now, the pros are it's all one thing. You don't have to mess with your airplane. You can use it for food and cooling. It's no problem to put a case of beer in there. It might be hard to explain that when you get a ramp check, but you can put the case of beer in there and plenty of ice, enough water to get it started, which is 2 quarts, no problem. it works good for what I do, which is, fly once a week during the summer. You can use it, obviously, you can set it in the garage, you can set it on the beach, anywhere else that you want. Cons, the handle design is not perfect for reaching over and loading it long ways through the baggage door. I did have, as I said, intermittent problems with the remote start cord. The other thing is you cannot change the speed with the remote. It's strictly on or off. It is a 3-speed unit, but you don't get to pick the speed unless you've got someone, in my case, sitting in the back seat, and that's it. So you're going to have to pick whatever speed that you want, and that's probably going to be the high speed, and get everything cool, and then just turn it right back off. Things you might want to consider is, again, if you have the bench seat, you're going to have to get the air tube into the passenger compartment. Now, one of the things you don't have to worry about with the unit is what's the air source. It's just going to pull air from the baggage area or the passenger area. So again, you don't have to make any modifications to the airplane. If you run the two below the back seat, you could use the extension and then the splitter, and that should work out for pretty much everything that you need to do. The remote cable, it's 8 feet long. That should be plenty to get you from the baggage compartment up to the pilot seat. And if you had to drill a hole somewhere, it's not, it's just a very small hole. The unit's 16 pounds empty. If you add 20 pounds, which is more than enough ice, 2 quarts of water, that's about 40 pounds. If you get 7-pound bags of ice, 2 of those will work fine. You throw in some drinks and a couple sandwiches. Again, let's say you're at 45 pounds. You're moving that box of 45 pounds in and out of the baggage compartment door, but it's not too bad. So basically, it's not a bad unit. The price is reasonable. It seems to be a lot simpler way to go than adding a true air conditioning system. The other advantage is in the wintertime, when you don't need it, you don't have to have it in the airplane. One of the things additional to consider is these units have rechargeable batteries, and everything with rechargeable batteries needs to be run periodically just to exercise the unit, exercise the charging, exercising the battery pack. So it's like anything else that's rechargeable. You have to kind of remember to use it a few times during the year, even if you don't need it for your airplane. And that's about it. So any questions? We have any questions?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm gonna stop your share for you. And go back to the regular view for the recording. So we have the gallery.
So I do have one question. So what happened, how do you get rid of the water that is accumulated at the bottom of do you have a built-in drain for that, or?
No.
Is it just?
No,
Okay.
it's just like any other cooler. There's a little drain tab over on the side that you don't see in the picture, and you drain it like any other cooler.
Okay, just when you pull it out of the airplane and then you drain it.
Yeah, and most FBOs have got ice available. So even if you're going on a cross country or something like that, it's usually not a problem to get ice.
How much have you used this thing?
I use it maybe, 10 times a year.
And what are the dimensions?
Okay, let's see. Exterior, let's just call it 24 by 16 by 19. So it's pretty much the standard cooler size.
Where is the air inlet on the box?
It's actually right there, that little opening at the top. Okay.
Okay. So you don't want to put something that's going to clog that on top.
Yeah, but yeah, don't put a blanket or something else on top of it, but no, it's not a problem.
And I mentioned on your first slide that they were saying it'll keep ice cold for 7 days if you're not using it. What's
Right.
the sort of real world? How long does it keep the ice cold in the real world if you're not using it?
Plenty
Like
of
in
time.
Texas.
I've landed and it's mainly water, but it was a long trip. And again, you're using, you're melting the ice because as you run the pump, you're taking the heat is going from the outside air into the ice. So heat always goes from hot to cold. So but you do the exchange.
And I was just with another pilot who had kind of a neat trick for the ice that might help. He freezes water in a jug used for the stuff you put in your windshield washer. He freezes water in a windshield washer container, puts a little bit of water in the bottom of his, he happens to have the ArcticBreeze, but similar concept ice. And that way, to unload your unit, you have that little bit of water to conduct the cold from the ice, from the frozen jug. And then he just reaches in, takes out the jug, which is, 10 or 15 pounds, and then he can take out the unit and it's not as heavy.
That may be what that white box that I showed initially was. I figured out what that part is.
Cool. And you've had yours for how long?
A couple of years.
Neat. And love it, wouldn't go back, or?
I wished it had a non-corded option for the remote, and I wish that it had a speed setting for the remote.
Those would be great upgrades for anybody all of us innovators who are creating the next units. Those are right on.
Yeah.
So
Is that a brushless DC motor?
I don't know. I understand the term, but I don't know.
Is there any EMI from it for the avionics?
Didn't notice any at all.
All right.
I just make a comment. I wish somebody would figure out a way to use the shaft coming out of the back of the engine to run a coolant pump instead of the vacuum pump. Once we get rid of the vacuum pump and everything goes electronic.
Now, Wayne, you were the one that sent that in, and I was like, "That's a great idea. Can you bring that up?" Was that right?
Yeah.
Yep. So we've got John Long with us tonight, and I don't know if Greg Turton's been able to join us yet, or PJ, but I'd love, because John Long, in addition to having some experience with installing the DC unit in the Comanche, is also somebody who has who has created air conditioners that are run in cranes. And actually, John, did you just disappear?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay, great. Is it all right if I pitch those ideas over to you as somebody who's actually got designer expertise?
Yeah, sure. before I forget though, since we are on the topic of ice air conditioners or ice coolers, I just was bringing up this. I don't know if y'all can see this, the Be Cool. This is a unit, sounds like it's similar to what Gary was talking about. I started with this when I was first looking at air conditioning. I went to an ice unit and I used the Be Cool. And I think I would give it very good reviews as an ice unit. My issue with it came with the convenience factor or lack of convenience factor of just getting the ice and then unloading the water after the flight. And also the fact that my preference for very cold air meant that I was using crushed ice like you would get, or small ice cubes like you would get at a convenience store where they give you more surface area, so you get colder air. But the flip side of that is I would only get no more than 15 minutes of cold air. After about 15 minutes of blowing, I was just blowing warm air. So that experience, while it was nice, it just, for me, it just, I just didn't have the patience for getting the ice and getting rid of the water afterwards. And actually one time I forgot to get rid of the water and then ended up with a pretty mildewy situation in the cooler. But anyways, I'd love to hear about the idea with the circulating coolant. I'm not sure how that would work, but I'd love to talk about it more. CJ, did you want me to talk about the Arctic air cooler, or what would you like? CJ?
Anybody else? Why don't you just go right ahead on it?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So just an update. I don't know if any of you guys saw, I think it was last week. I was on here because I have very recently installed the Arctic air cooler, which is the electric air conditioner. The unit that I installed was the RAC 200 12 volt. I was very excited about it, hoping to that it would be the solution that I was looking for. Unfortunately, right now I'm not in a good place with it. I've had quite a few problems. I did a lot of effort getting ready to put the thing in. I initially had a 50 amp alternator and then upgraded to a 70 amp alternator in order to accommodate this unit. And what I found is that it is, I've had a few problems, but I first had problems with the digital controller that it came with. They sent me another one and that fixed that. But I'm currently having problems with excessively high amp draws. I've talked with them back and forth on it. And I get conflicting messages from the company. So I say all this to say, I'm not sure yet whether I can recommend the product. Based on my current experience, I definitely would not. I am still hopeful based on speaking with another Comanche owner who has one who he's had for several years, and he's happy with his. So I have a little bit of hope that they're going to get this worked out. The company today sent me a return label for the entire unit. And they said they're going to go through it and try to figure out what's going on. My concern, frankly, comes from the fact that if you go on Arctic Air's website right now, they are no longer showing this product. They can't produce them. They can't get the parts for them. And so I'm concerned about what the support is going to be like going forward. when the thing is working, it blows cold air. But what I've experienced is that it very quickly starts to show an excessive amp draw, and I saw up to 49 amps the day before yesterday, which is just way too much for a 70 amp electrical system. So I guess that's my update on the ArcticAir RAC 200. I'm not in a great place right now, but I still hold some hope that it's going to work out.
Are you pulling that off of the cigarette lighter?
No, this one requires a lot more power than you could get from there, and so you have to install a wiring essentially directly to the battery. In my case, I installed an aux power port in the baggage compartment, and it uses a big plug because you need to have a power source that's rated for 60 amps plus. So you put a plug in the baggage compartment dedicated to the air conditioner.
This is the one that's got the bilge pump in the bottom, and the bilge pump circulates the air through the radiator, which then.
No, this one, the one that I'm speaking about now, the ArcticAir, is a regular air conditioner. It's an electrically driven compressor, motor and compressor. So sorry for switching there from, I was at the beginning talking about the Be Cool, which is an ice unit with a bilge pump like you're talking about, that I had previously, but I switched from that to the ArcticAir, which is a conventional electric air conditioner. That's the one that I'm having issues with.
You mentioned, John, that you think you have adequate airflow through the part of the system that does the actual cooling. You know, you've got to take in relatively cool air and you've got to get rid of the hot air outside the aircraft. Have you tried putting a booster fan on that cooling stream versus using just the internal fan it has? And here's why. The ducting, 90-degree bends will cost you a lot of airflow. Distance will cost you, I assume you're using scat tubing on this thing. And it's just, if you're using tubing, it has a cost. And an inline booster fan may help you.
Yeah, you're talking about on the inlet side?
I'm talking, well, you got to take the heat, you know, the fresh air on the heating side of the unit, the part that does the, what is it, the condenser? You know, the compressor and the condenser side, you know, the part that, the part that's taking the heat out of the airplane.
Yeah.
I'm not making the cold, taking the hot and getting it out. That airstream, I've wondered, you said you have plenty of airflow. Do you think that maybe a booster fan would help you get more flow through that stream? It sounded like the gentleman was saying that's your problem.
Yeah, no, I think he's got the wrong idea there. No, on the hot air side, there is a very powerful fan that exhausts the hot air. I don't know, you know, this is one of these things where I've put in a ton of time on it. As CJ mentioned, I've actually, just by coincidence, I've actually developed air conditioners, DC powered air conditioners that I sell into the steel manufacturing industry. And so I have some experience with this type of thing. And this unit, I'm hoping that I just have a lemon, because that would be great. If they can find something wrong with it, then maybe all my problems will go away, but right now, if this is the way it's designed, it just can't work in this airplane. It's extremely sensitive to temperature, and the amp draw is extremely temperature dependent. What I found is that I can go out to the airplane. If I went out to the airplane now, it's 77 degrees outside. If I ran it, it would run perfect and it would blow cold air. And all the airflow is great. But as soon as you go out in the middle of the summer afternoon to run it, as soon as you start it up, its amp draw is way above even what they market it as. Like yesterday, for example, I started it up in the heat of the afternoon, and Right off the bat, even before you're moving, it's 36 amps. And then after a while of going, like I saw as high as 49 before I just shut it off. So like I said, I hope that that there's something that they can find that's wrong with it, because I've tried everything from, you know, making sure that all of the negative pressure sources inside the cabin are not in the question. Like, for example, I've got a 250 that has a reverse air scoop underneath the rear seat, so it's drawing air out of the cabin, and I made sure to block that off so that it wasn't creating a negative pressure inside the cabin that would cause a backflow on where the hot air was trying to get out of the back of the unit. Anyhow, I say all this to say it's a work in progress, and I'm really hoping that that they're going to find something wrong with my unit that is causing it to act like this. I feel comfortable that it's not the way that it's installed. I mean, that is all, you know, just right. But if they can find something wrong with my unit and send it back to me, I'll be thrilled. I've been getting sort of mixed messaging from the company that that makes me pretty nervous at this point.
Where do you exhaust your hot air?
It goes through the back of the baggage compartment into the tail cone area. And then from within the tail cone, you've got two exits. One is right out the very, very tail cone, you know, past the stabilator. And the other is, I installed on my airplane a reversed air scoop, a backwards facing scoop in the rear fuselage under the belly. I would have liked to have done it up on the top of the airplane, because obviously that's where your heat would most sort of congregate. But it just aesthetically and structurally, it just wasn't as good. So I used I put a scoop on the belly of the airplane, and that's where the hot air goes out.
The scoop you've got that you blocked off, is that smaller or bigger? Or could you not use that in addition, or
the one that I blocked off? I could unrivet it and move it to this location. Frankly, at this point, I'm not going to make any more changes to the airplane until they get this thing worked out. I already have it's a pretty decent reverse scoop. I think actually, let me see if I can pull up a picture on my phone to show you guys. Because what I did is I had laying around, my airplane previously had inlet scoops on the lower portion of the cowling up front that were additional fresh air. I don't know if you all know what I'm talking about, these little scoops up there. Anyhow, I had previously removed those because I never used that air inlet portion. I just used the little ones that are on the sides, that where the door flies open into the windscreen. Those were, you know, sufficient. And so I had those scoops laying around, and I took one of them and turned it around facing backwards. And that's what I have as one of the air exits. So again, I'm trying to find that here, a picture that I might be able to show.
Oh, that's cool. And I've got the install in the other. Oh, good, you got it.
Yeah. So I want this thing to work. Okay, this picture, I'm going to hold up here and see if you guys can see it. All right, there it is. Now this is a view looking from the tail of the airplane. You could see the nose gear way up front there. So this is looking forward. And what you see there with the little metal screen in it, that is an exit scoop. And you can see that it's facing backwards. So that's the additional air exit that I put on. And that's in addition to, at the very tail of the airplane, of course, that sort of oval shape where the stabilator arm moves up and through it. That's really the primary air exit.
Gotcha. And would it be a good time for me to share Chris Cotton's install?
Yeah,
And I think Pete's got yours. I'm going to do a quick share screen, and she'll be coming up in about 3 seconds. And
hey guys, Chuck's here.
Forgive me.
Hello, Chuck here. Can you hear me? Hello.
Hey.
Can you hear
We
me?
loud and
CJ?
clear.
Okay. I've been listening in on the air
We can hear
conditioning
you.
bit.
Yep.
And as far as air conditioning is concerned, the biggest thing that increases the amperage draw on a compressor unit is lack of airflow on the condenser side, on the hot side. So as a thought with that, how about if you pull off that side panel, run it on the ground and run it with a ground power unit? Open up your baggage door so the hot air intake is wide open. Open up that tail access door. What does it do there? If your currents go down, you found your problem.
Oh, it definitely, you're absolutely right that it is temperature dependent. I did a little test of temporarily blocking up the air outlet, and you can see an instant large amp rise. And I believe that is the problem.
Yep. In air conditioning, that's what happens.
That's right. But my concern is I've done everything within reason to solve that.
You got plenty of air coming in. You got to open up your fresh air vents and get plenty of there.
Believe me.
And you know, we're talking about, you know, the unit itself is what, 200 cubic feet per minute. That's the inside circulating.
Yep.
But
If you're able to see
condenser
your
area,
screen,
the
I've got the specs up on the unit.
the condenser would be a whole lot more than that. So it takes a pretty large area opening both in and out to handle that volume of air.
You're right. You're right about that. And that's what I've got. I mean, it's got the airflow going to it, and it's got the airflow coming from it, and it's just running hot. And you know, I like I said, I hope that they find there's something wrong with my unit.
Right.
Because I run with, I run it with the vents open. I've got the exit air, I've got the inlet air.
It still sounds like you're not getting enough airflow across that condenser. Maybe that motor is bad, or that fan's bad, or there's something inside of the unit that's causing that.
Another little bit of I hope that there is something wrong inside of it. Something also to think about that I've noticed in doing testing here recently, because I'll let it run and I'll go back there and open up the baggage door and feel around what's going on. It puts a lot of heat into the tail cone area. And I hadn't really thought about that too much before, because of course you're expecting it to exit. But it's sort of unavoidable that you get a much higher temperatures after the baggage compartment. And I have some avionics back there. I've got my my ADS-B, I've got an autopilot, and they're doing okay. But I got to think that that's something that to consider, that you are adding a lot of significant ambient heat to any avionics that you've got behind your baggage compartment.
That's a really good point. Were you all able to see the screen share I just did?
Should have, yeah.
I saw it, the picture of the unit.
Yep. So the reason I wanted to bring that up, I'm going to bring it up again, but John had pointed something out when he talked to me ahead of time. And so there's a couple of things that I thought it would be helpful to show everybody, in part because here we are, we're installing something that we love I mean, I've talked to probably a dozen pilots that have various forms of air conditioning. When they work, we love them, especially for in Houston, Florida, South Carolina, Georgia. These things are awesome. They make you more comfortable. They make your airplane more usable. First of all, just a quick story. John, when I was talking to Greg Turton, who was Jimmy, do you know if he's going to join tonight? I know he was trying to be on, but I also know he was trying to finish a fiber install for internet for some people.
When I talked to him yesterday, he was planning on CJ, but I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I texted with him. If this hurricane and the fiber install are causing a lot of last minute changes to schedule. So I'll just relay. So first of all, one of the kind of cool things, but also one of the things we need to remember is we are often dealing with very small businesses. And it is, in this case, the story of Arctic Air was somebody said, hey, do you think we could do this? And John, how did you come to be building air conditioning units for cranes in warehouses?
It was a situation similar to that. It's not something it's a couple of years before I was doing it, I never envisioned or planned that I would be doing it. Yeah.
And Ron and John make a lot of panels for Comanches, and now Cranston Kincaid is out there making us baffles and more panels and printing stuff. So part of the thing that I respect about John Long is he is an experienced air conditioning designer and engineer dealing with another air conditioning company and you've been really, very even-handed about the whole thing. You know your stuff. You want the unit, it works when it works. You're looking at strange behavior. And I've spoken with you offline, and you've always been very like, you know what, it's a process. I think there's something wrong with this unit. They're a little back and forth, and we'll get it sorted out. So, which is very appropriate, but it's also just something like when we deal with small businesses, it's not like we're dealing with Garmin. And as a result, there's more innovation. We may get a better price, but we also don't get Garmin level stuff. The other thing that I wanted to say is that I'm still wondering if you didn't get something from their very early production. The story that Greg Turton told me was he built this, first of all, as he said on the part 1 Zoom, he built it and the compressor burned up, and he got an air conditioning, a person that actually had a lot more experience building these, come in and look at the design, and they said, well, you got the airflow wrong and you got this other thing wrong, but what you've shown is it can be done in a 12 or 14 volt system, and so let's fix the things that we know about from air conditioning and try it again. And he said that they built so that's it. They were like, okay, we're going to hang out our sign. We're in production. Their first order was for 20 units from, drum roll please, flight school in Phoenix, Arizona. We got people on from Phoenix, Arizona. It's hot. It's really hot in Phoenix, Arizona. So they get back to him and they're like, well, they're all shutting down from high temperature alarms. And he said, I tested every one of those units before I sent out. I'll be out next week. So he goes out to Phoenix, Arizona, walks out on the ramp, and it's 120 degrees. And he said, I had never seen heat like that. And he said, so they shipped them all back, and they changed the engineering again to handle Phoenix, Arizona style heat. And they shipped him back, and he said, the flight school's a customer, still a customer. So the behavior that you are describing, John, sounds so much like the behavior he saw in the first set that didn't work in Arizona. And the frustrating part from what I'm hearing is he's off trying to run his main business, which is installing fiber optic. And you're dealing with, like 2 different sets of people in a small business. And so I'm fully expecting that you're going to get this solved because, it works when it works, but just.
Well, and that's my hope. That is my sincere hope. I mean, I put a lot of effort and money and time into getting to this point. And I am going to send it back to them, and they're going to take a good hard look at it and see what's going on. It's certainly been a frustrating and somewhat discouraging process up to this point. But man, if it works, and I talked to Chris Cotton today, that you would put me in touch with, who's the other Comanche owner who has one. Now, interesting, I didn't realize, but he's actually had his for several years. I don't know how many years, but he said several years, and he's very happy with it. So, and I tried to probe a little bit and try to figure out whether there were any differences in the installation between his and mine. And from what I heard, I didn't find any. So
I'm going to screen share a couple of pictures of his install, but I looked at your photos and his photos. There's some minor differences, but I'm going to go ahead and throw my screen up right now, and then we will see.
CJ, my avionics guy, this is Jimmy, and a friend of mine's ASP has advised me to take that inspection plate off the tail and put a screen on it to get rid of the heat.
Yep. And I want to show you, Jimmy, something that Chris Cotton installed. So forgive me. I'm going to make you all dizzy.
Yeah, he louvered his. Yeah.
He did louver his in the same place. So I am going to open these up a little bit and just start going through. So this is also a Comanche 250. I can do anything you want. So I'm at this point, John, just going to drive the screen according to what you want. I'm going to quickly show you what I've got. I've got this picture of his install, and he's got it strapped down to the hooks in there so that it doesn't move around when the airplane's in flight. And then this is a further back picture looking through the baggage area. And you can see the exhaust into the tail through the gray bulkhead on the left. And then you can see near the top where it's ready to go up and through the hat rack. And then this is the louvers getting ready to go into the tail of the airplane. There's that access panel. And then there's a video.
Okay, it's about 3:30, July 22nd.
And if you look,
this will be the first flight.
There is the louvers.
I think, CJ, I think that last picture, yeah, there you see the louvers. I think the other picture was actually the cold air outflow that goes up above the hat rack, I think.
Oh, you're right. Yep. So I'll go ahead and back up to that one.
LEDs.
And this, for all of you who are interested, is a Houston Comanche with the DC unit. It's the same unit and same airplane. Just and as far as I can tell, from looking at both your photos, the same installation. So going back to those photos, and then here is the unit. And the thing that I wanted to mention, as John said, is that if you look, it says power source works in a 12-volt aircraft, which is fantastic, 42 pounds. And it says if a plane will give us 27 amps of power at 12 volts, the unit will put out 7,000 BTUs of air conditioning. And if you can give them 19 amps of power, it'll put out 5,000 BTUs of air conditioning. And you and Chris both mentioned a cushioned, Robert, if you can, or Pete, if you can get the waiting room, a cushioned, or I forget what you called it, but basically it doesn't just spike the voltage when it starts up. It kind of gradually comes up, which is a nice feature.
Yeah, the soft start.
Mm-hmm. What you said.
That unit, that screen you see in the front there, is that the inlet air for the unit? That little screen spot on the front there?
The largest one is, yes. There's actually inlets on 3 sides, believe it or not. Or no, I'm sorry, there's inlets, there's screens on 2 sides, and then there's the outlet on the 3rd side. My mistake.
So he's outletting on the back side of it, and that large rectangular screen is probably on the right-hand side, which would be the front side of the unit?
That's correct, yes.
And he's inletting ambient air with the baggage doors shut. He's probably getting it from both leaking through the tail cone and leaking from the passenger compartment versus a dedicated source of air for it. Now, if you're recirculating cool interior air, that can help because you're starting with cool air to begin with. But to me, that airflow on that hot side looks like the other gentleman said, that's probably the first place I'd look. And I'd look a way of ducting some air into the unit somehow with a fan, if it was my problem to solve.
You got to dump that heat.
Yeah.
A little 12 volt squirrel cage fan might do a nice job, you know, but again, you gotta, if you just circulate hot air through that thing, that the numbers they put up said that for 5,000 BTU, it costs you this many amps, and for 7,000 BTU, it costs you that many amps. So obviously the harder it works, the more juice it takes.
Yeah.
You're an A&P and you're an AC guy, so you know, you say it's got airflow, but that's first place from a guy sitting here on the other side of the laptop. I'd be looking real hard at it.
Yeah. Well, I guess my big thing is I paid them to have it already engineered the system.
Right.
I'm not getting paid to re-engineer it.
It's
So
not an easy enough to solve. I mean,
yeah.
You buy something, you want it to work, but
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, so I like I said, I hope that they'll get it. I hope that they'll find something is peculiar to my particular one, because as I said, you know, it's designed to handle the inflowing air that I've got, and it's designed to handle the outflowing air that I've got, and it's just not doing what it's supposed to do. So, but again, Chris Cotton has one and he's happy with it. And I hope to be in that situation soon.
And Cotton's in Houston. I mean, you know, of the two of you, his heat situation should be even worse. So it really is pointing to, as you suggest, that there's something going on with the unit or the board.
What concerns me, I touched on this earlier, is something that I think you said his name was Greg, but they told me, anyways, they told me that as I mentioned earlier, if you go on their website now, you cannot find this product. They've removed it. And I asked them about that, and they said that's because they can't produce them now. And the reason they can't produce them is because the manufacturer of some of the key components, and especially their main board, has told them they won't manufacture for them anymore. And that more than anything has me pretty concerned right now. I don't know. If I had known that, you know, obviously prior to ordering, I don't think I would have ever ordered it in the first place. But here I am, and I'm hoping that they can make it work. But they're in the process, as we said, it's a small business, and they're trying to find a new supplier for probably the most important component of their unit, their main board. And so, given that, I'm on the fence, but I'm not on the good side.
I'm just looking at the website right now, and it's showing on the website, but it's showing as out of stock.
Okay, maybe that's something they just did, because as of yesterday, they had removed all mention of them.
Yeah, and I just posted a link, but it's 3 to, was it, Martin, is it 3 to 4 months, they're saying?
Sorry, I muted myself. Yes. 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
It's availability.
There's no hope until December, right?
Once the snow flies, we'll get that unit right to you guys, and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great, I tell you. Just wait.
it'll be working just fine in December.
Perfect.
To the point of component, all these solutions, do we know if they're using American parts or Chinese produced parts? And this is going to become more important in everybody's life before you know it. I mean, does anybody have any idea on that?
No.
I
I'm sure it's overseas. To keep the product cost down, I'm sure it's overseas.
I think the cost of producing overseas is gonna come home to roost for us all. I mean, just look at Ford F-150s and how much that costs with their chips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're saying what the chip shortage, Troy?
Yeah, that's right. And many other things. Now, I'm just thinking about it. When I'm looking at solutions, the more I
Yeah.
can find produced completely in America, it's worth more to me. It's just a thought.
Right. This is bringing us full circle back to the importance of American small and rural business, in really supporting the return of our small business economy and the importance of these funny little old airplanes to making the transportation problems you have in small and rural. Speaking as somebody who's in small and rural, it takes me 28 hours to get any place commercial. I can get in 6 hours in a Comanche what it'll take me to go 28 hours in a commercial thing, because I got to drive 3.5 hours to the airport. I need to leave an hour to 2 for TSA, etc. And Tim, yes, for sure. Tim's just pointing out, be nice to the Canadians too. And yeah, I'd say anything I can get in Canada or the US, I'm starting to feel more comfortable. So I will say that Garmin and S-Tech, while we're talking about this, because we've got two fairly large companies there, relative to airplane stuff, they both had delays in getting their autopilots out related to sourcing parts. So even after the approval, S-Tech had I think it was a 5-week delay. And, and they got it, but they were going through the supply, especially given the demand that we put on them. And that was a good thing. It was great to run the guys out of parts. Hey, we Comanches want so many of them. You guys have run out of stuff.
Sure, COVID didn't help us any.
No, and that ship getting caught in the canal, created a whole ripple that went everywhere. But it is, we're in a weird era where whoever thought we would have part shortages, but they're affecting Garmin, S-Tech, ArcticAir. The ProPilot guys have had to ramp up and start to make sure they have a good supply of their parts for the ProPilot autopilot, because we have something like 110 of those that they're gonna be shipping to us Comanches. It's support your local small businesses. We're gonna need them.
Comanche's bought 110 of those autopilots?
At least. Yeah, they sent 85 deposits, and once they had $85,000, they said, "Stop. We don't need this much to get the STC done." And then that's when they went to the group buy special part 2, where you didn't get quite as much off. Instead of the 50, whatever it was, $57.95 price, you got basically a $6,000 price, but you didn't put in a deposit. And that was because they didn't want to keep taking money that they weren't going to be using, and they just said, keep giving us your pre-STC deposit so that we can help with our supply chain planning, and we will give you a great price.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a lot of autopilots.
Garmin is going to be selling at least 60 or 70, and we ran ElectroAir completely out of stock. And I talked to Daryl of ElectroAir just yesterday, and they're going to be coming over to ComancheTown to talk about electronic ignitions and engine hacking and engine performance. But he said we are still getting calls from the ComancheZOOM, and forget who it was that relayed the message, but he said they're going to give us a really phenomenal group buy special for the newest version of the ElectroAir electronic ignition. And I'm needing to reach Jason Hutchinson, the general manager for SureFly, who had given us their very first ever group buy special, to see if he'll come and talk to us as well.
That's me. I bought the ElectroAir. I'm
Chris,
the guy that,
yes.
Yeah, that's me.
Yep.
And check went off yesterday. It's a killer price if you compare to what's on their website. It's $4,000, and you get the switch and you get 6 fine wire plugs, and this is the one that puts a little module, replaces a mag. So yeah, I've got
and you
mine.
will never need to do mag service again for at least the life of your engine, and possibly this engine and your next one.
I don't plan on touching this engine again for the life of me. I'm overhauling, and that ain't gonna be anything I have to worry about, I hope.
Yeah. Well, we just installed.
Well, you might have to. You might live and think.
Well, hey, while we're talking engines, CJ, now that I've got my electronic ignition check in the mail, I'm hankering to buy myself a set of dual exhaust, and we've been kind of going back and forth on that. Can we get it before the gentleman comes back in August and I contact him? Can we get a poll of our Comanche people who's interested in a 4-cylinder or a 6-cylinder set of dual exhausts? So maybe I could say, hey, you know, have some ammunition when we talk to them.
Well, so the dual exhaust team is going to get folded into the Eagle Cowl. You guys are going to get connected.
Well, it's the same guy. Is he still doing the cowl or
exactly.
does he sell the STC?
No, it's not that. It's that when his partner passed away, I think it was, maybe some other people can say this. So the Eagle Cowl, for those who are not familiar, is a cowl that was created as a mod for all the Comanches but the sea. And it creates quite a significant speed increase and some changes to the cooling, and it completely replaces the lower cowling. Does it replace the upper cowling too? Yes, it does. It replaces the whole nose. It gets a lot harder to check your oil, but you go a lot faster. And it was 2 guys and in Florida, and one of them passed away, and they did the dual exhaust, and then they did this Eagle Cowl. And there are many Comanche drivers who want that cowl. And so what Chris is talking about is being able to get the dual exhaust, but the dual exhaust was part of the purchase of the Eagle cowl because the cowl required it. And Greg Peel, who's in the Tampa area and is a mechanical engineer, Pat Lee, who's I believe in the meeting with us now, both senior and junior, and oh gosh, 2 other technical people who I am spacing right now, all are interested in working with them to see if we can either purchase the STC and restart the process, or otherwise just get that cowl again available. So that's the background on that. Martin, Greg's not in with us this evening. He's off getting his airplane back in the air after 35 years of not being flown. Does anybody else have any information to add on the Eagle cowl or anything to any thoughts to add?
I want to get back to the exhaust. Why is the exhaust hanging its future on a cowling?
It's not. You're correct about that. We should be able to put a group buy special together on the exhaust. But if we can, but since the 2 are related, I see what you're saying, Chris, to say let's just establish the relationship around the exhaust and then continue on to the cowl.
Well, no, the exhaust to me is a here and now. If he's got parts made, if he doesn't have parts made, then he's probably going to have to get them, and more people wanting them will make that more expeditious, and maybe we can get a better price. So,
yeah,
you know, if we could poll people who's interested, seriously interested in exhaust, we'll have something to talk about. The cowling. Right. The cowling, on the other hand, I would love to help with that, but only to the extent of I live near Huntsville, Alabama, which is a huge hotbed of aviation. And I was working with an outfit that does the skunk works for the Army aviation stuff, and they've got a lot of contractors. One of my friends was the lead engineer for that bunch, and maybe we can get cowlings made unless they have got a manufacturing source. But, you know, but that it sounds to me like the cowling, you've got tooling and you've got this and that, and you've got to get them made as well as the exhaust. But I hate to join them together because a cowl is they're expensive, and you know, there's a gentleman on Delphi that's looking to put a 260 motor in his 250. He's going to need the exhaust. He says, I'm going to hold off on that. Well, how's he going to do it? Yeah. You know, I think we need the exhaust. I need it. I'm not going to put my So anyways, if we can get a number, then we'll, you know, maybe at Oshkosh or something, you know, how many people are interested in this thing? And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it because the guy's not there. He won't be there in August. He's a one-man operation.
It's usually a $4,000 dual exhaust if you're not getting it with the Eagle cowl. And I think and you're saying you might be able to help with the manufacturing side of it because you've got connections. If they can make an agreement as to a group buy tiered price, is that kind of the idea?
Well, for the exhaust, I got nothing except I want to buy one. And if we can, when I talk to the gentleman, if he says, well, gosh, I got to get them made, and you know, they want a minimum amount to make them, and so and so and so forth, setup costs, that's where the group buy would be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
absolutely.
if we could get a feel for how many Comanche people, I don't know, are they available? Are they on the shelf? I don't know. I don't know the answer to this because the guy's not there. But that's my dog in this hunt is the exhaust. You know.
Yeah. And Ryan, you just mentioned Acorn Welding.
Audio.
Everybody there?
CJ, you there?
Yeah, we lost CJ.
Are we talking about the guy that's down here in, I think it's Daytona? It's Aviation Performance Parts.
Yeah.
The one that does the dual exhaust.
And when you call down there, it's a different business, and he's just one guy in that building. I get the impression he's on vacation for 2 months.
Yeah, I need him to take another tip for my reason. My tips aren't the same distance, and I'm actually very close to him. It's not far from me. I live right by West Palm Beach. For me to fly to Daytona, nothing. And I've got to contact him, and I've been just overwhelmed with other things. But I didn't know that this guy's not doing much, I guess.
Are you flying with his exhaust?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe
how do you
this
like
exhaust. It was put on the plane years ago.
Are you happy with it?
Yeah, it works great and it sounds beautiful.
The slip joints are
repaired. I did have a baffling inside repaired on one of the mufflers, but I sent that down to Fort Lauderdale to an exhaust place down there, and they just repaired it for me. But others been okay. It's been great.
We also have a dual exhaust on our Comanche that we put on maybe 10 years ago, and also had a baffling problem at one point, but got it fixed. I don't remember how much it cost or who did it really. I mean,
mine was like a couple $100, and they just opened it up, did their thing, put it back together, and certified it, and back on the airplane. Is what it was. There was like if you look up in the exhaust from the tip, there was baffles that are supposed to be there so nothing can go up into it, and they were gone. It completely just, I guess, blew out of the exhaust, and they fixed that, and that was it. On my way.
We actually had a problem at one point where one of the baffles, we didn't know it was the baffle that was loose, but it actually plugged up the exhaust, and the engine would suddenly lose power, and it was pretty dramatic. But then it would fix itself, and it'd lose power, and then it'd come back, and we'd keep on flying, and eventually somebody figured out that it was just a loose baffle that was literally shutting off the exhaust.
I'll have to talk to Russ Wright. He bought a dual exhaust for his Comanche 180 probably about it's got to be less than 2 years ago, and I know this is the same guy that he dealt with, and Russ has talked to him here and there. So I'm gonna ask him this weekend when I go to Ocala and see what's up with that. I'll ask him if he's talked to him in a while and what's the situation, and if he can give him a ring and see what's going on lost to maybe get this group buy going, or if we can.
I'd just like to make a little comment here. Dave Gettleman put the twin exhaust in his 180 Comanche. He sold it there a few weeks ago, but and he had that airplane. We used to race together, and until he put the twin exhaust on his airplane, I could beat him. After he put it on at full power, I couldn't keep up with him.
Well, did you get on the radio and talk about, did the RPMs change? What what was the difference?
We were
Because the
racing.
exhaust, well, but the exhaust isn't gonna change the drag of the aircraft, so it must have made more power.
It made more power. I'm sure of that. 'Cause I used to be able to outclimb him when he went to the exhaust. Our climb was equal, but once we got into level flight, he pulled ahead. I'm not saying he went 5 miles an hour faster than me, but he pulled away from me. And prior to that, I pulled away from him.
If you're climbing the same, the power that's confusing.
He's
But
fatter
so
than I am.
my plan
He's
is
heavier than I am.
my plan is I'm going to have Lycon do my cylinders, which is supposed to add a little power. I'm going to put the dual exhaust on,
Yeah.
and I've got that ignition system coming.
You'll like the dual. Is it 180 or 250?
It's a 250.
I can't speak to the 250. I know the 180 gets more horsepower at high RPM. It just does.
Well, I'm there at 2575, but what I was talking to, we had the fuel injector guy on a few weeks ago, and I talked to him about my carburetor, my little 320 and my Citabria, which I run on auto gas. And he says, yeah, $960. And I said, well, I'm cheap like every other pilot I know. So he said, okay, call this guy up here in Michigan, some kind of supply company. And I sent it up there, and the guy told me, yeah, it'd be $760 worst case. And he told me today it's $775. So I must have had a really bad car, right? So, but I mentioned the fact that I'm doing this to the motor, and I said, you guys are restricted on the carburetors as far as the rich jets you can put. He said, no. I says, I'll bump it up a little bit for you. We can flow them to horsepower. So there's another I got to ask about if we are increasing the power and the carburetor's fixed to how much richness it could put in, are we hurting ourselves?
Well, both Dave and I had the Marvel Schleiber, how do you say it, carburetor, and we had to go to a little bit larger jets so that we weren't really lean on the wide open throttle.
So you got your carburetor up jetted also.
A little bit. So at full power, I'm sucking about 16 gallons an hour at full rich in the cold up here in Rochester. And before it was about 15 or 14, 15.1 or something like that. But
the only difference was the exhaust. Just that exhaust difference. You said you've gone from 15 to 16.
That had nothing to do with the exhaust, though. That was because we changed the jets.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right, for the jets. Well, I'm learning in all this, and that was something I learned today. I didn't think they could mess with the carburetor jets, but it seems that they can.
Well, you want to have enough fuel flow so you're not lean at full power. You don't want to be cooking things.
Oh, yeah, you can always lean it down.
Yeah.
So you like your dual exhaust, and
Dave Gittleman had a dual exhaust. I had the standard exhaust in my 180.
And I just texted Dave Gittleman to see if he can remember. I said, Dave, we're talking about you on this Zoom.
Yeah. We were buddies for 30 years.
Oh my goodness. Well, he had texted me and he said, I just sold the 180. He said he'd gotten to the point where the FAA sort of wasn't sure about the medical, and he sold it in a day. Unfortunately, if I'd known that was coming on the market, I would have gone and lain down in front of it and been like me.
Good airplane.
So yeah, I do want to just do a quick mention because the topic was originally AC, so that we wrap there. John Long said he's going to keep us updated on his saga, and you've got Chris Cotton's links in the Zoom to a video he put up of his family flying with it. From Jeff Munford, who has a business down in the Tampa, Florida. Oh,
that's Dave's airplane 30 years ago.
Oh my goodness. Can you hold that up again for 1 second?
I'm trying.
All right, you're gonna. Oh, nope, hold it. Just a little to your right. There we go. We'll see. Okay, I'm gonna send that over to Dave.
And that's
Jeff
me,
Munford.
and that's my picture there.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. I'm gonna throw that in. He'll be able to see part of it because the Zoom takes your background, which is your airplane, and it keeps trying to cover up that photograph because it recognizes it's not you. So just a couple of quick updates from PJ and from Jeff. PJ had to do a last minute schedule change. He's much earlier, and so the 7:30 is the middle of a workday. But what both of them are working on, interestingly enough, is getting more CFM. So PJ is working with his supplier to get more cubic feet per minute, and then Jeff is planning to add a second fan to his unit, and he's done some pretty cool work. He's worked with Greg Peel, who's another Comanche driving mechanical engineer, who I mentioned, to adapt an air conditioning unit used in data centers to our use, to having a portable DC powered unit. John Gritchie just asked a really good question, so I do want to mention something. For those who are coming to Oshkosh or considering it, and John, this is new news for you as well. We have 3 airfields, Comanche drivers or people on 3 airfields in the Oshkosh area. We're going to be doing an assembly at Baraboo, which is Kilo Delta Lima Lima. So if you know of anybody, please pass the word. And if you are coming, then know that you can overnight in reasonably priced hotels near the field. And then we're asking everybody to try to hit the arrival point fix, which is, what is it? Victor, John Gritchie, it's something RIP. Is it Victor Romeo RIP? Or Victor Foxtrot?
Yeah, it's Ripon. I can't remember the exact fix up there, but
yeah,
it's Ripon. It's right over the town of Ripon, practically.
Yep, right. And I think it's Victor Romeo. I think it's anyways, it's either Victor Romeo or Victor Fox Romeo India Papa for Ripon. The benefit of Baraboo, and John Gritchie, who's on your screen right now with the Red Rocket, you've been invaluable to helping to figure this out, along with Eric Jones. So many thanks to you. There is a twin driver that's based at Baraboo that said, I've got a big hangar, I can make it available for a briefing. We have a lot of people who are, and Pat Lee is now in the Zoom as well. And so there's 2 things I wanted to let you all know. First is, if you would like to get together with other Comanche pilots ahead of flying into Oshkosh, it's not a mass arrival. We're not doing formation flying, but what we will do is get together in Joe's hangar and go over the procedure of getting into Oshkosh together. And believe it or not, Joe lives close enough to Oshkosh that he's like, I just drive up and leave my airplane in the hangar. But he's got a bunch of other guys, and so he goes every year, and he knows a lot about Oshkosh, but he's got a bunch of guys that fly in every year, and they're going to come and help us with the briefing, especially because this year it's a little bit different. Second, this year they are expecting so much traffic that you really need to read the NOTAM, because they're potentially adding 2 other waypoints, and they will do that if it gets really busy. This is an adjustment that was made after they had really bad weather 3 years ago, and they ended up with a zillion airplane, going around and around Green Lake, and for hours. So, and Green Lake is the holding point for doing the Ripon and Fisk arrival. So that information about whether they have made a decision to extend this waypoint so they can funnel everybody into Ripon and then on to Fisk is going to be on the ATIS. So it's just a kind of a quick reminder to read the NOTAM, monitor the ATIS. They have the most, what I was told by a flight controller at Oshkosh is the most experienced controllers in the world compete to go and be the controllers at Oshkosh. And it's all volunteer. They never get paid. They just want to be there doing the job. So at least as far as I know, they don't get paid. So if you read your ComancheZOOM invite, there's something that John, bless your heart, put together. It is hotels, and it's the 3 different airports with restaurants nearby, the addresses and names of hotels nearby. If at the moment there were still a few rooms left available for Thursday night and I think Friday night, John. Close to, yep.
Yeah, I think there was still a couple for Friday as well.
Yep.
And there's really the two choices there at Baraboo. There's a couple of other smaller kind of motelish things, and there is a Motel 6 there too, but I've refused to stay there. So
If it's got a shower and it's clean. And then we are planning to get dinner together for those coming in Thursday night to go and be able to get up Friday morning all refreshed and take off one at a time and land at Oshkosh. And that apparently is quite an amazing dinner on, is it Mirror Lake, you said?
yeah, it's on Mirror Lake. It's a place called the Ishnala Supper Club. It's a really good restaurant.
Yeah.
And not overly expensive for being good, and kind of a neat place.
And on a lake. Yep. There's Kristen Winter will be at Wapaka, which is the Piper Flyers and the Cessna Flyers gathering, and that is being held on all day Saturday and all day Sunday. They have seminars. We may try to get a group to go up there just to participate in that. And Kristen Winter, as you all know, is one of our premier twin experts and a very, very good instructor in Comanches. And Piper Flyers, because she writes for there. Some of you have seen her articles on the Comanche, including one that just came out on landing gear with a lot of input from Matt Kirk. She'll be there just to kind of show the flag and do meet and greets. And so she'll be wandering over to ComancheTown, but you can also see her at Wapaka and then at the Piper Flyers booth. I think she said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. As a result, Maggie will probably be staying in the hangar or in Wapaka, but she'll be coming to ComancheTown. I think the last piece of info I have for you all is Pat Lee is trying to help get Comanche. So if you are able to come and help create ComancheTown on the 23rd, which is a Friday, even if you cannot stay for much longer than that, like if you have to go for the air show, if you're in the Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan area, and you can bring your plane in and help to create that parking area, that works just fine. Vintage said we can always take a Comanche out and replace it with another Comanche. And you will help some of the birds behind you to be able to stay in the same area with other Comanches as opposed to potentially being spread back a little bit and having to come up later. So feel free to come and join the pre-party and we'll be there.
And CJ, I just wanted to add that Katie, my wife Katie's giving a couple of lectures there.
Yes.
You want to explain?
Let's see, I was just looking for, they gave me like a schedule. I'm just checking it out. And let's see, where did it go? But basically I'm talking on Thursday.
Okay.
Where did it go? It was just here. Here we go. I'm talking about the Artemis program at the NASA Pavilion. So I'll be around at the NASA Pavilion basically much of the day on Thursday. And on Friday, Thursday, there's two talks, one at 10 o'clock about Artemis, about the program about going to the moon. And then there'll also be a panel about women in space. And
cool.
A bunch of about 6 different women who all work for NASA or the contractors who are mostly pilots. And then me, there's one of those at 11:30 on Thursday. And then Friday, we'll do the same thing. The same 6 women. We'll talk again Friday at 1. So we're looking forward to being there. I think we're going to try to fly into Appleton, hopefully in our plane. I don't know if the Comanche's going to be ready. We may be trying out the Cessna and its avionics.
Oh my goodness, that'll be a slower flight, but yep, cool. If you do make it over to Appleton in the Comanche and you want to be part of because you'd be coming early. No, you're going to be coming in what, Wednesday?
Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday afternoon.
Oh, Wednesday midweek. That might work. So for all you that are coming in midweek, and we do have 40, Pete, how many is it on the ground now? 50 something on Wednesday?
It's almost 60 on Wednesday.
Oh my Lord. How many Comanches are now registered total?
I don't remember. It's
62.
middle 60s.
Okay.
In
All
fact,
right.
it's the highest, it's like 69.
Oh, it's got to be more than that. Oh,
69?
you mean, no, you mean worldwide or?
No, this is,
registered to be at Oshkosh.
Oh,
yeah, no, this is great. By the way, Josh, are you going to demonstrate any glass techniques? That's a question coming in from the Loudon Sachs.
No, unfortunately not.
You'll need to bring some stuff. Well,
You have to
Katie,
come-
we might need to have you just come on over because there's going to be to talk about the, being an astronaut in the NASA program. If you'd be willing, that would be pretty cool.
We can certainly try. I sort of don't own myself there quite yet. I'm trying to figure out, exactly what I'm doing, but I certainly will try to come over and I'll know more about it in the coming weeks.
And we'll try to find you. So we need to I think what we're going to need to do is just say, like, where is everybody and what's the cool stuff? So like you talking at the NASA pavilion, Kristen Winter talking, what's all of these women? Come on, you guys, who's talking at Sun and Fun? This is a little weird. Kristen will be representing Piper Flyers and wandering around. And then we know for sure, we think Garmin is going to come and talk, but we're not sure. We know Electra Air will wander over and talk about engine hacking. And we don't have a schedule for any of this.
Here's the latest list on who's there when.
Holy cow. Pete, is this sorted? We have not seen these kinds of numbers of Comanche gatherings in 2 decades at least.
What do you mean sorted? This is real.
I mean, but we've weaned out any duplicates.
Yeah, the duplicates are gone, and it's real.
So we got 70 Comanches, close to, all told, 60 on one day.
Yeah, there's 58 right here.
Okay.
On Wednesday.
And yep. And Pete, as far as arriving Thursday evening on the 22nd, you're talking about, right? Go ahead and just put your message in the chat window if you can't.
Yeah, there's 4 coming in on Thursday, and there's 19 on Friday. So that's a total of 22 that are going to be there early enough to do the arrival.
Yep. And Pete and Pat Lee, now you know why we're needing to try to hold as many spots as we can in there for this mob that's coming behind us if we can. Got it. So for everybody that registers, Pete, can you bring up the list real quick? Yeah.
Sure, I can try. Hang on.
Yep. This list, which is, we don't, again, because of the changes to parking this year, what we're expecting to be able to do is this list will get sent to everybody on the 20th. And that way everybody can find everybody else. It'll be what your airplanes are, what your name is, what your tail numbers are. And Dave Gittleman just wrote back everybody. So I'll feed that information into the chat window in a moment. Okay. So Pete and Pat Donovan have been our, coordinators extraordinaire. Pete's been, grabbing and creating this amazing spreadsheet. Pat knows how to park us and led the whole creation of this parking incident. So that is.
CJ, this is going to be at the vintage camping area, right? For
the
ComancheTown.
Exactly.
So VCA is the sign to hold in your windshield.
Yes, vintage air VAC, actually vintage aircraft camping.
Yeah, the grand total is 64.
Okay. So Pete Lautensack, yes. So given that I just got told that 5-4 Pop won't be out of annual, I might actually even be that right seat, extra set of eyes if you want it. And then I'll zoom back over and fly back out with Dad. Sorry, you guys, to throw personal business into the Zoom. So this list is how we can all contact each other. And so if you are registered to come to ComancheTown, and there's this thing you can click for if you're driving in, because some people are driving in, not flying in. Pete, just one more question. Are all of these flying in, or do these include some of our driving ins?
No, it includes some driving, but they have no X's, so they're not counted as a spot. This is the list of who is coming.
Oh, in an airplane, in a Comanche.
Yeah. These are
Okay,
all the
wow.
people that are registered.
Okay, got it. Yep. So if you are driving in or flying in commercial or something like that, go ahead and register anyways. Just click that you're driving in so that we don't count you as a Comanche that's going to be a physical airplane on the ground. But what we really are trying to do is just to create the camaraderie, the ability for all of us to connect with each other, to trade information, to make friends and stay in touch with each other and help each other down the road. So we'll get this information to everybody. If for some reason there's information in there you'd rather not, then just let us know and we'll take out whatever you don't want shared, and that's fine too.
Okay, if you're not flying in on other mode, you're going to put down what the mode is, like a car here or driving here.
Yep.
Where do we register, CJ?
You go to northeastcomanche.org, and I'm sure Pete will be putting up a picture of it, but go to northeastcomanche.org and you can click on any form links, which will be under the big blue stripe across the top. There'll be any form links is a link you can click, and then in the bottom right-hand corner,
there you go.
Pete's going through it now. That's the blue stripe on the top.
northeastcomanche.org.
And then
Go
you
over
click
here
on
to
any
form links.
Mm-hmm.
And right here is Oshkosh ComancheTown registration.
Yeah.
Okie doke.
Okay, great.
Click on that and you get the form.
Awesome.
And-
Thank you so
And you
much.
have
Pete,
a
can you wave your-
whole bunch of things you can connect.
Right. And one thing, we have some pilots that are going that have empty right seats. And if you're willing to, throw a couple of shekels into the fuel bottle and share under Part 91 or and be an extra set of eyes, then we have at least 2 seats available that we know of. And then again, if you're driving in, Pete has a spot there that you can click where it just says you're driving in. Feel free to put in your airplane information, but click driving in so that we know. And there it is. What is so cool about this huge number, Pete, is there were, for the 50 at 50, the 50th anniversary of the Comanche, Zach Grant and some other people organized a huge fly-in into Oshkosh, and they gave us some reserve camping and parking because they do that for the 50th anniversary of the type. And I think 60 people total actually did it, but this is extraordinary. So I think for our 70th anniversary, we should go for 100.
All this stuff is going to be talked about again next week because the whole Zoom is about getting to Oshkosh.
Yeah.
So this is not your only chance to hear about it.
But it is tough because people are planning now. Yep. So I think that's it as far as air conditioning. Any other questions or follow-up comments or suggestions?
Well, just
Not on AC, but
Hey, Hans Sticker.
I just decided I'll be going as well. I'm going to be in the right seat.
Outstanding.
I'll be coming.
Oh yeah, good. So yeah, stick your registration in. Whose right seat are you going to be in?
Gloria.
Oh, outstanding. Yay.
Okay, I can't wait. First time to the Oshkosh.
Hans, you're kidding.
Yeah, 45
You guys,
years.
oh my Lord. You guys are definitely going to want to be in next week's Comanche Zoom then. And yeah, come on in early, grab a hotel room around Baraboo or John Gritschke's home airport, 57 Charlie is nifty, and there's some hotels around there if everything sells out around Baraboo. And then Morey Field, Rich Morey has offered to support us. He's near Middleton, Wisconsin. So
Okay, yeah, and I'll register today.
okay,
good,
great. Oh, terrific.
If it's okay with everybody, I'm going to stop the recording of the Zoom at this point. This has been a heck of a discussion, and it's people who go back and look at the recording are going to get lost jumping from topic to topic, but that's all right. This is
Yeah, we might need to put it
I'll
in.
see you all next week on the Zoom about arriving at Oshkosh.